reminder that we love questions from the audience, so you can start commenting your questions now, or you can also add them as we go. I'll be right back on to welcome our guests to the show. Thanks for meeting us for coffee. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. This is my first podcast episode back after a little over a month of a break from hosting. I had the absolute blessing of being able to have my baby boy the end of January. And so I've been enjoying some time away, some maternity leave. And so I'm excited to get back to it. And I thought this conversation would be a great way to kind of kick off my return, because I want to know what's going on in the workplace, in the labor market, in the job market right now. And so I tapped my good friend Blake on the shoulder to come on and kind of catch me up with what's been going on. I have no other great announcements, so I'm just going to bring him in to introduce himself. Blake, how are you doing today?
Hello, and congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And it's awesome. I get to be the first of 2026. So
yeah,
that's exciting.
I know, new year. I think we're going into maybe the third year the podcast has been around. So we're kicking off another
Congratulations
year.
on that too.
Thank you. It's been a long time. I mean, it doesn't feel like it. Time flies when you're having fun, I guess. But doing this every couple of weeks, a year sneaks up on you pretty fast.
Oh, yeah. And getting back to it after 2 months. I remember first watching you, 2024 into 2023, starting this and following your journey. So I'm super excited to be on it and be a part of that.
Awesome. Well, a lot's changed for both of us in the last couple of years. So if you don't mind, can you introduce yourself and tell us more about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Blake, as you announced, Collins with my last name. I've been in supply chain over a decade now. We're going on year 12, which talk about time flying. A little bit about myself. I was in the freight brokerage world for about half of my career at C.H. Robinson. Fantastic company, great people, really learned the industry in and out there. COVID hit. Obviously, everybody had some struggles with that, both on labor, which we'll talk about later, and as far as being in the business. And then in 2021, I kind of just had a moment of what's next for me. So my co-founder with me at Armada Talent Group, actually, John Lincoln, we were good friends outside of work. And he was like, hey, I might be able to recruit you in this industry a little bit. So we got to talking, and next thing you know, I'm recruiting and doing talent acquisition, and specifically in the supply chain vertical in 21. Grew my career through a couple years at a good company out in Denver, and then ultimately in 2024 decided I think we could do this. So John and I put together some business
Yeah.
plans, and we partnered with a very large temporary staffing company here in the Midwest called now Armada Staffing Group. So we've kind of rebranded all of our companies, and now we're just over 2 years in business. So it's very exciting. Our team's up to 7 members now, and we're just continuing to grow and help great companies win great people.
Well, congratulations. That's awesome. And I think we were starting businesses around the same time, so it's been a fun journey. And you're right, we knew each other early in that process, so to see you
Mm-hmm.
guys grow has been really awesome.
Likewise.
Um, well, I want to start with asking you to kind of just set the stage for us for this conversation. I usually like to do that when I'm having a guest on who has kind of like the subject matter expert. Give us a lay of the land, if you will, to kind of prep us for the rest of this conversation. So I'd like to know what are the overall trends, or kind of what do you feel like has been the theme so far in 2026, if you had to describe how you feel like the job market is and the talent pool right now?
Sure. I could make it funny, and I can also make it serious at the same time. It really comes down to companies saying, why can't I find good talent? And vice versa. I have candidates saying, why can't I find good companies? And there's great companies and great talent out there, but it's being able to understand, is it the right person in the right seat? Is it the wrong person in the right seat, or is it the wrong person in the wrong seat? And really evaluating from a company perspective and setting the stage for today's conversation. Do you have the right people in the right seat first? And then if you don't, how are you moving those chess pieces internally? And then vice versa, when you come to a firm like ours or any great recruiting firms in our industry or other industries, finding that right person that should be in that right seat. And those are very generalized comments, but that is really the trend I've seen in the first 3 months of 2026.
What do you feel about how has the labor market kind of been affecting the way people are moving too? Like, would you say people are looking, like we have a lot of people looking right now? Are people kind of hesitant to make moves? Are they eager to make moves? Or are companies kind of eager to hire right now? Or are they a little hesitant to hire? Or like uncertainty has been the theme for kind of like the US economy, right, for the last
Mm-hmm.
couple of years. So is that trickled into hiring? Are people feeling uncertain about that, or are we feeling more confident now in 26?
When you ask this question, it always is going to be different every quarter. Q1, I tend to see to be the hottest from both company and candidate. And why is that?
Yeah.
Is because the last 2 years, most companies, even 3, 4 years post COVID, they want revenue generators. How can we
Mhm.
tell our board, our investment firms, our privately held firms, how are we going to continue to make money in this economy? And vice
Okay.
versa. Candidates are also asking, I've got friends, colleagues making these moves, making X amount, Y amount more than I'm making, even though I'm performing, whether that's sales, operations. How can I make more money? Especially with inflation. You go to the grocery store
Right.
right now. Even me, with a little kid at home now, I'm walking out of there minimum $300 weekly. And now there's inflation and the salary gaps are increasing, which creates a psychological nature of, well, I had a great year in 2025, whatever that number might be, but this company only wants to offer me this, and vice versa. Maybe that company has different expectations. So it's really understanding where are the psychological gaps and bringing them together.
Mm. That's so interesting, and I like your call out about, like, Q1 being about revenue generation, because that sounds right. Like, Q4 is typically about planning, right? And then you roll
Mm-hmm.
into the new year and you're like, "Okay, we have to make these plans reality." Like, who's gonna do that? Usually, it involves revenue coming in the door, and so, maybe that would also be, like, a specifically hot quarter for kind of your sales or your performers and those revenue
Mm-hmm.
generators too. Interesting. Any
And
insights
I
into
tend
kinda
to
like
see,
Q2? What does that usually morph into
yeah.
heading
And
into? Because
well,
we're
what
almost there
happens
already,
is,
which is crazy.
yeah, when you get to the end of the year, depending on how your company is compensating you, you probably have a monthly, quarterly, or annual type of bonus coming in. So what we typically see from a candidate perspective is they're probably waiting for that annual bonus to come in January or February. They did the work for it. They hit their numbers. And I am focusing on sales here, but that's because that's the trend I'm seeing right now.
Sure.
That's still the case for operations, product, any goals you have set. You're probably
Right.
not, as a candidate or a person in that seat, getting paid until February. That can
Okay.
change. I'm giving you a generalized outcome with that. So what we tend to see is we see that start to uptick in February from a candidate outreach in our private network or even our public network that will reach out to us. They want to start farming some new opportunities out there. And I know we'll probably talk about this a little later, but these are the passive candidates. These are the ones that are doing well. They feel good in their job, but these are the types of candidates that a lot of companies want to see in the interview process, is because they don't need this job. They want to come work for you with this company because they believe in what you're doing. So March really starts to pick up, which is great timing for us to be doing this, because that's basically been the last 4 weeks of our company is focusing on those candidates and getting them set up with our clients.
Awesome. Okay, well, let me ask this. You got to go to Manifest. I'm very jealous because this is the first time I had to miss it. But this was your first time going, so that's exciting. There was over 7,500 people. I think I saw at Manifest this year was what they ended up releasing as the stats. It's a huge industry conference. If anyone's listening, you're not familiar, it's called Manifest: The Future of Supply Chain. And it really is like everyone in supply chain, not just logistics. It's like warehousing, distribution, automation, all of the things. So it gets a really big, diverse crowd, but also it draws in investors and it draws in a lot of startups too. And so you have these really big established companies, you have all sizes in between, and then you have like companies going for their, Series A or their Series B or whatever it is, and then you have these investors there looking to invest. And so I'm just curious, if I'm sure you had some unique conversations and got some good insights from whether it was startups or investors or established companies on like what they were thinking about this year. Were they're actively headhunting? Were they trying to get the funding to add heads and talent throughout the year? Like, are there plans to grow teams and people this year? So love to hear what insights you scooped up from
Yeah.
the conference.
I saw a lot. So my first time, the last 2 years, I've just ran into some problems not being able to go. I took a lot in this first year. My co-founder with me, John, he's been going the last couple of years. So it was nice to have somebody like, hey, here's kind of where we're at. I did make personally, and this can even be for the viewers and listeners too, really having that targeted outreach to make sure you're connecting with people prior to the conference, not just Manifest, any conference specifically in our industry. You want to try to get at least 5 to 10 meetings, bare minimum, pre-booked so you can talk to them. And from those, I saw outside of the meetings, a lot of robotics companies, which is very interesting when we talk about labor. Because in theory, artificial intelligence and robotics and SaaS platforms would take away from the human job.
Yeah.
So what we're doing to get ahead of that is understanding how can we, and this, I'm going to come back to your direct question on the conference, but how can we, not just us, any recruiting firm, any talent acquisition division, get ahead of that by partnering with robots? I know that sounds crazy, but this is the world we live in now.
Yeah.
Can we create jobs that coexist with automation? And there's going to be new jobs because of this that we don't even know. I don't even know what those look like yet. So we're looking at that. Obviously, with direct hire, it's a little different. On our temporary staffing side, we did bring one of the owners of this company out with us, and he was blown away by these robots in a warehouse, because we have all these people in warehouses. He's like, oh my God, did I just come to a conference that's going to put me out of business, basically? So anywho, I could go on and on with that. What I've been hearing, excitement. The energy was crazy. I'm sure it is every year, but specifically with some of the startup clients I've worked with, both in freight technology, transportation, warehousing technology, I saw a ton of those companies, whether that's supply chain orchestration, integrating all techs within one single platform, WMS, that's the obvious. I saw a lot of those companies and I saw energy. I saw excitement, and I saw Manifest is the perfect time of the year, going back to what we just talked about, revenue generation, meetings book. I even had a client walk away. One of the guys calls me a couple weeks later. And he's like, Blake, we walked away with over 10 deals closed at this. That had never happened before. So I'm giving a small sample size, but in my network of where I saw people, excitement was the key word. And maybe there's things shifting. We still don't really know, but excitement is the word.
That's awesome. So what are we thinking about as far as the excitement? Is it excitement? Is it a little early to tell, but is it actually going to be translating into a action, I guess I should say, in 2026? Something that I find interesting about our space is that we don't always have to mirror the economy exactly. Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we're almost leading it. So like there's more optimism for overall general economic activity heading into 2026, but we're still kind of like worried about it. But sometimes in the supply chain space, we kind of find our own traction and our own grooves, like aside from what the rest of the economy is doing. And so do you think
Sure.
2026 can be a year where we kind of start to see more like big ideas actually coming to fruition, or teams not just saying like, well, we want to do this but we're a little nervous, this might not be the right timing, like just with everything going on? Do you think people are finally ready after the last few years and confident enough to keep leaning into making decisions? And I'll follow that up with, I don't really think we've seen a huge slowdown in funding in this space from investors. We've seen them get pickier, and like, oh, like some people learned some hard lessons back in, the COVID days, but we've certainly still seen a lot of activity with mergers and acquisitions even, and investment. So how confident do you think people are feeling about making growth
Yeah.
decisions in this year?
Well, I think to your first with the excitement, I don't necessarily believe supply chain was the last industry to adopt AI. It certainly seems like it, and software. Over the last 7 years, give or take, it's been a slow ramp. And I think the excitement comes that transportation companies, shippers, warehouses are finally buying into AI, literally and figuratively. They know that this will save them money, which at the end of the day, what we do is to make money and also save our customers money. That's where the excitement is that companies are finally accepting these discovery calls, learning about these products, and they're like, oh my gosh, this does make sense for us. And here's why. So that would be the answer to my excitement. And I hear that from our clients, and even just as we're networking there. From a funding perspective, it's absolutely happening. We have been looking at our partnership angles with private equity firms, venture capitalists, specifically some CEOs we work with. They're taking 3, 4, 5 meetings every other month, continuing the funding, and they are actually can be a little pickier with who's investing in them as they go through Series A to Series B to Series C. So I think that would be my most direct answer to the excitement piece.
I'm interested in understanding kind of the impact I think that AI is going to have. As someone who helps fill roles, are we seeing new job roles? Like, are we seeing like maybe titles we haven't really had to consider before? Because you bring in the technology and that's great. You might even, it might even result in letting go of certain people or needing to at least shift resources to different roles. But then maybe do we need people with different types of skill sets to be managing the technology and the tools that we're bringing in? Like, is it creating new types of jobs we haven't seen before?
It will. I
Okay.
don't have job titles yet, transparently. And this, some people might like this, some people might not. But I think AI specifically, it's great for bigger companies. The Riders, the CH Robinsons, the JB Hunts. When you start to implement AI into the smaller organizations, the ROI on that tends to take a little bit longer. And that's just from word of mouth, talking with me, understanding it. There will absolutely be new jobs that I have no idea are jobs yet. And I can't wait to share that with you. I'm going to make a note of this to ping you on this, to talk about that on a
Yeah.
future podcast, because it will come. And that goes back to us getting ahead of that and understanding, what do those jobs look like? Because are you managing the AI? Are you a safeguard? to that AI that could make a mistake, because once those mistakes start trickling up, it's essentially, if you think of it from the labor market, it's a fireable offense. So how do you have those protections? I don't know yet, and I hope if there's a listener that has that, I'd love to hear it.
That is really interesting. Blake, another question. I mean, you guys, we've been talking a lot about supply chain logistics, obviously, but I know that you guys are part of a broader company too, and you kind of get like these little windows and glimpses into other industries. We're very reliant on other industries for the volumes that are created to move, actual shipments of freight in the freight side of our space. So I have a lot of listeners from brokerage or trucking or even, transportation managers. But I'm kind of curious, have you guys been able to put a finger on any other industries that seem to be also growing, doing well? Are they hiring? Are we seeing any, uh, light on the horizon for any certain manufacturing type verticals or anything you could give us there?
Sure. So specifically with us, we have found a small niche in the healthcare technology vertical. We have a few clients there. And then we are also working in the construction vertical. Now, the healthcare vertical, transparently, I've been doing supply chain for a decade plus, so I can confidently talk about what I've seen. We are still learning kind of how they're hiring, how does their growth trajectory. It's pretty similar, but the biggest difference I find with those companies, if we focus maybe on the healthcare tech side versus supply chain technology, and some of my viewers have probably heard, if they see this, they've heard me talk about this. Supply chain technology is a tight knit group, and most decision makers aren't open to hiring people outside of the industry for obvious reasons. I tend to agree with them, but lately, healthcare technology, if you have SaaS experience and you've sold a full sales cycle and understand it, they're industry agnostic. And that was kind of a aha moment for me where I was like, we've actually made a hire who's performing well, who really just needed to understand the value proposition. But at the end of the day, they could do the job. So what I'm seeing in other industries is our industry specifically is a tight knit. You have to have that experience where other industries seem to be open. When I talk construction, it's too new for me right now. We have a guy specifically we brought on to do this. He would be great to have here today. He's just not with us.
Yeah.
That's a whole new world of hiring. It's project managers, superintendents, and it's a different world because these are construction products. Projects. If we have people in Atlanta, I know people in Columbus will attest, construction's everywhere. So these people are working on 2 to 3 year jobs, projects, and then they're off to the next, and then they're off to the next, and we're just building large infrastructure. So I'm still learning it, and I'd love to give you some insight behind the scenes as we continue to gather the other industries as well.
Do you think that have we seen, from the companies you guys are working with, are we feeling pretty confident in some of the momentum in the construction space in general? Like, do they seem to be looking to hire? Is there some traction? I know that, man, I mean, we've had a lot going on with we're hearing announcements of commitments to companies creating infrastructure here in the US, especially with all the tariffs and all of that, wanting to bring more here. I'm even thinking on the staffing side with warehouses or distribution centers and building these things. Do you think that there's going to kind of be this ongoing need to create talent and labor pools, around growing infrastructure?
Absolutely. It's actually on the staffing side specifically. We have roughly 65 internal employees. We just launched in our 9th state. I don't want to go too deep into this.
Yeah.
Our primary focus is Ohio. Every single time a new hotel, construction building, warehouse gets put up, that's an immediate 25 to 100 jobs, which what I do and what we do for work is we love to help people find. It's not always a dream job, but it's a job that pays the bills with great benefits and it can provide for their family. We are seeing that. And I love when infrastructure goes up, one, because now we can help with the construction side. And two, we also have the labor behind to put those people into those projects. We are seeing it, specifically in Ohio. Nationwide, we're still kind of getting our feet wet with Texas, Utah, South Carolina, just to name a couple states, but we're following some of our clients out to those states that are building in those states.
Okay. We have like 10 minutes left, and I have some, like, this isn't just one question, it's like a bunch of questions mashed into a question that I feel like is going to be really helpful for our listeners. So if we have
Sure.
anyone like in leadership, in, whatever level, honestly, that might be that they have to hire or they have to oversee the hiring decisions. Um, I want to kind of pick your brain on what advice you would give to people right now when it comes to things to do, things to avoid, like mistakes we wanna avoid because we hear from Blake that you should avoid them. And just like how are we making sure that we're handling things the best way possible when we go to hire new talent? Because a lot of people are feeling optimistic about 26. I'll be honest. Like most of the people I talk to are optimistic. I think the reason the energy at Manifest was excitement, right, is because people are feeling good. So there's a lot of companies who are planning on investing in their growth and trying to hire and grow throughout 26, especially into 2027. And so what I've heard though also is people are like struggling to find those right people to fill the roles that they have in mind, or we just came off of a few like tough years for a lot of people in the supply chain space, and so you're excited to go out and invest in your growth, but it would be kind of a costly mistake right now if you messed it up. Like if you made the wrong decision and you paid a good salary and you realize at the end of 26 that that wasn't the right decision, like that doesn't people aren't really comfortable about putting themselves in that position because there is risk to that with the tightness that we've all experienced in the last few years.
Hmm.
So, how do we help people hopefully have the most, the highest chance of success when we're talking about what we should be doing right now with hiring?
Fantastic. Great questions. And I might come back to you to remind me on a couple, but the biggest thing when it comes to a cost of a hire that I find decision makers making a mistake on is they get very micro level. They say, well, the salary was a waste of money. The recruiting fee didn't make sense. I then also had to pay for their equipment and benefits. That's not what a cost of a bad hire means. And guess what? I hate to break it to everybody. You're going to make one bad hire a year. Nobody's perfect. My favorite word is I'm not a magician. I am good at what we do, but we can't just wave a magic wand and have that person stay forever. A couple things that you would want to think about if you're starting to hire or how to avoid a costly mistake is making sure that your onboarding, your training, and your coaching is set before you go to market to hire. And what I mean by that is getting your interview stages set and concrete, because the moment I said this at the beginning of our podcast was, if you're going to go through 5, 6, 7 rounds, you're going to lose that candidate. These are passive candidates. They're coming in with a mission and they want to understand. The biggest shift I've seen from candidates, they aren't just looking for growth, equity, and just an extreme run rate. They're actually looking for stability right now,
Mhm.
given the market. Stability is key. And if you don't have, and this is going to sound simple, a good website, a value proposition that you can identify that your company is separating yourself from competitors, and then third most, a good company culture. Now, in this virtual world we live in, just like you and I are talking today, it can be hard to really understand if that person's a culture fit. Maybe you look at some small personality test. That's totally up to the company. The other part of an opportunity cost that's gonna hurt you is just the production from that role. Maybe your value isn't set up. You've lost sales because of this. That might
Yeah.
not be the candidate's fault. That might not be the person's fault. It might just be you didn't set this person. The expectations weren't aligned. So all of a sudden, you're pointing fingers at that person. And I'm twisting this to the candidate side right now. There's also a bad hire can happen. They just were really good at interviewing and they ended up getting the position. Don't get me wrong there. But those are the two costliest mistakes, is you really have to come prepared and understand who you are, because that candidate wants to work with and for someone that they trust and believe in the product. They don't just always want equity, growth, and $500,000. That's great, but you have to have something. I hope that
This
all makes
I
sense.
love how much our roles or our careers honestly kind of overlap right now. Like I don't do recruiting and placement, but as a consultant, as a revenue consultant, I'm very involved in a lot of the hiring decisions at my companies that I'm actively partnered with, right? Or even just like a job alignment and assignment. And I saw Chris pop in the comments. Hi, Chris. Thanks for listening. I think that the stability piece that you mentioned is huge, because the number one thing that you need to think about is if you want good talent, like really good talent, you might have to pull that talent from somewhere where they're already doing a really good job. Like it does happen where they get burned and they're actively looking to leave. Sure. But also a lot of times there's really good talent that could be persuaded to go somewhere even better, but they're pretty comfortable where they're at. And especially on the sales side, if
Absolutely.
you look at someone and you're like, man, they're crushing it, they're performing, well, they're probably getting paid and they're probably enjoying, the business they're at, because they wouldn't be crushing it if they were selling a terrible product or if they were selling a
You're
terrible service.
spot on. And our businesses do coexist. I work with a lot of consultants or sales coaches where we kind of coexist. And if I can flip it from a candidate perspective, the biggest mistake I see, if we want to focus on sales here, because the theme right now is revenue generation, you should have all of your sales numbers since you started working in sales.
Yeah.
I'm going to just be honest. I get mind blown when someone can't tell me what their sales numbers were 5 years ago. Why that is because if we're going to pay you as a company what you think you're worth, okay, tell me what you've done the last 5 years. Honestly, wording on a resume to me, it's starting to become extinct unless we're looking at, and that's a whole nother can of worms. But if you're in the sales, marketing, revenue generation realm, you should have the proof of concept of what you've done the last 5 to 10 years, because then that decision maker or hiring manager is going to go, wow, Samantha, you know what you're doing. Like, what is it going to cost me to bring you over here? And I try to guide candidates with that, but that's what some advice I'd have for candidates is really hone in. You should brag about yourself, be humble, but brag about what you've done, because those accomplishments, in my opinion, are really awesome.
So I think I want to summarize through what we have talked about already. Like, obviously you talked about making sure your processes are set for bringing on that talent.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that not be the case many times. So if you could expand on that, I mean, I think what you're saying is make sure that you have actually thought past, oh, we need this person to do this role, and then like go hire that person. Like what is their actual like day-to-day going to look like when they come on board? Who's going to train them? Who do they report to? How are they responsible? And then like what are they tasked with, as soon as they're coming in? I've seen that happen where you bring in talent and they're ready and they're excited to be useful and purposeful, and then they like feel like they're drifting for a while because there's no like clear avenue of what they're supposed to be doing and how they fit into the organization.
Process wise, make it as cut and dry. How many interviews are we going to do? Who's it going to be with? And when are we going to make the decision? Set the candidate up for success. I typically say 3 to 5 rounds, pending what the role is. Then through that interview process, if you're a candidate, you should absolutely ask, maybe towards the final stages, what does success look like in the first 6 months and the first 12 months in this role? I'd be willing to bet that hiring manager might not even know that answer. Maybe it's 50-50. And that's going to make that person go back and say, wow, that was a really thoughtful question. Okay, maybe I do need to advise on this, because if you can set the expectation of success, you could even do 3 months, 3, 6, 12 months down the road. We now know, Samantha, just because here you are, this is what you need to do to be successful. And here's how we're going to have a pretty good relationship internally with culture, right?
And as a sales consultant specifically, I highly recommend this for sales hires to save yourselves like from wondering if you made the right decision. Like think about what you're expecting from someone and compare it to other people in your organization or experience. Get multiple people to like give you input on what would be a realistic like achievements for a new sales hire or leadership hire, and put it down and talk to them about it. And one, if they're intimidated by it and they don't think they can do it, they won't take the job. And two, like you don't have to stress in 6 months that I don't know if they've done enough. I don't know if we're seeing enough revenue. I don't know if we're like seeing enough deals, because like you predetermined what you were going to be comfortable with and you gave yourself those metrics. And so now they're either measuring up and hitting them or they're not. And you know what you're gauging them against. And I have talked to so many vice president of sales, head of sales who are asking me to evaluate a couple of their sellers with them. And I just don't know. They've been here a year, they've been here 2 years, and this is where we're at. And I'm like, you could have avoided all this uncertainty if we had like put, metrics on it the first
The
day that they
cost of
walked
a
in the
bad
door.
hire just happened in 1 to 2 years, and that cost was pretty lofty.
Yeah, and I mean, and then we're all humans and we have feelings and we get
Yeah,
empathetic and we don't want to make a judgment call. And is it too early? And like next thing you know, like you fire someone 2 years into a job that didn't produce, and that was a cost of a bad hire. So
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. So wrapping up the process, full circle, you've got your 3, 6, 12-month plans.
Mm.
As a candidate now, you've understood what it's going to take to be successful. Now, there are scenarios where you might be hiring a candidate that's going to actually be launching that success. That's a whole nother can of worms, especially in the startup space. That person
Yeah.
probably should have done it before, and they should actually be coming to the CEO, founder, co-founder, board, and helping them understand what that he or she's first 12 months is going to look like. But setting expectations would be the magic word.
Absolutely. Okay. So talked about some things that we should be doing. What else should we be doing when looking at candidates? Like, let's say we've figured out our process, we've started the job hunt, and now we're actually evaluating people. Something you mentioned earlier is that in healthcare they're willing to hire people from out of industry. We tend to have a lot of hesitation around that in supply chain. I personally advocate to do it if you find someone talented, specifically in sales, as long as you have the resources to train them. If you
Mhm.
don't have the resources to train them, I would advise against it. But that's just my opinion. So what are your thoughts on, maybe some things that people could be considering as they're looking to place people? Do we need to be looking at competitors and trying to take talent? Are we looking into, adjacent industries where they're somewhat familiar and taking talent there? Where
Sure.
do we go look for the talent when we're hiring?
So you have to understand, where is your company at now? And I'll just use some easy examples. Let's say you're a 50-person company, your run rate 20 to 50 million. The numbers don't really matter. If we're looking to bring on an operator, a sales member, a marketing person, if we go to a bigger company, a CH Robinson, to bring you to a smaller, you've probably already had the tools in place to set you up for success. I've seen it work, I've seen it not work. What I mean by that is that candidate might not have the getting their feet all dirty soft skills. That's not saying not everybody can. I came from CH. I didn't know what small business was until about 5 years ago.
Mhm.
It took me some time to get used to that. So I'll be the
Yeah.
first to say I fell on my feet a couple times entering into a small world. Vice versa, if you're coming from a smaller company into a smaller company, you've understood what it takes to be a smaller player in the big pool, and you know how to bring the business in, operate the business. So first and foremost, look out for, where is that candidate coming from? And if you like the background, then you have to dive into the soft skills, understanding who they are as a person. Did they play sports growing up? Were they in music? Any type of competition is always very healthy in a team setting. That would be the first lookout. The second lookout from a company perspective is, as you go through the interview process, just really understanding the person and having a couple people meet this person so you get a few secondary ideas on that. I tend to see sometimes 2 or 3 people will jump on the interview with one candidate. One, that I don't love that idea, because it kind of pins that candidate in a corner, and they're like, who am I answering to? When you can get 3 opinions on someone, you might catch something. And if you all 3 don't raise your hand, then maybe that's not the right person. I hope there's a couple questions in there, but I hope that
No,
made
that
sense.
was good. And I would say too, you mentioned, like after we look at experience and that look at soft skills, and I feel like this is part of soft skills. Maybe it's kind of building on that too, but I really love like in an interview if you can try to create like situational questions too. I have been a part of a lot of interviews for my clients, and thankfully they all came to me and were like, "Hey, I would rather you help me come up with like, here's what I would usually say. What would you say?" And I would be like, "Well, a lot of what I noticed in leadership when we're asking questions in interviews is we're like, I don't want to say they're yes no questions, but they're like not questions that are asking someone to really expand on like their situational awareness and like what they've done necessarily. It's more like, what are your numbers? Like, what are you looking for? And you're like asking these types of questions. Whereas I really love to encourage you to ask, like, if they have industry experience and you're hiring for sales, it could be like, hey, tell me about a time like when you had to really work hard to close a customer, and what did your process look like, and what was that pipeline process as you advanced them through the sales cycles, and why do you think it was successful?
Mm-hmm.
Or that could actually, that doesn't have to
And
be
I actually
industry
like
specific.
asking, sometimes I'll advise from a sales side, ask a candidate about a time they lost a deal. How
Hmm.
long did it take to lose the deal? I know that's
Sure.
a funny question, but were you in the grinder for 3 to 6 months and you thought this was going to close? And you could almost gear the question to tell me about a time you were like heartbroken from a deal. And if they said I was never, maybe they really just don't care. That's not everybody. I'm generalizing here, but like I
Lies.
know for me
As a seller,
specifically,
I've been heartbroken many times.
yeah, like and
um
you should like rejection, or excuse me, you should just be like, who cares? But at the end of the day, we're all human, like you said.
yeah,
And if you get hurt by losing a deal, in my opinion, that means you care.
yeah.
And I think every company would love to have somebody that just genuinely cares about the company.
Sure. And I mean, this goes into operations too. You can say, like, tell me about a time that you had to, two employees who didn't get along that great or who were struggling to work together. What did you do for that? Like, you ask these questions. And what I would encourage the interviewer to think about is someone who has truly like lived and breathed a role similar to what you're looking for and has the experience necessary can come up with these answers, because it's like, oh yeah, like that time, that time, that time. And I say that a lot about sellers, because if you're interviewing an experienced seller and a winner and you're asking questions about a deal that closed, a time it was tough, like a time you did get rejected, they have like, I have vivid memories of all of these scenarios, right? And so they should be able to recall these to you, and really you should hear some emotion behind them. And that's one way that I've been able to kind of avoid the trap of the people who are really good at interviewing, who can like
Yeah, and even
throw out
operation.
numbers or like, but when you ask people to like talk about a time that involved their emotions, that's a lot harder to fake in an interview, is how you emotionally felt about something if you're making it up as you go
And
along in
they
that
won't
moment.
expect that question. So you're
Mm-mm.
going to get an answer. And
No.
if they take a second to answer it, that's fine. This
Sure.
sometimes there's too much formality in it. We're all humans at the end of the day. So, and you can do the same thing with operations, because sometimes if I think back to my CH days or even currently with Armada, there's moments where a client might not be happy with you. And it could be you might lose the account because you priced something wrong, or so maybe you ask those operations people, how did you handle adversity? What were the steps you took? What types of
Yeah.
emails, or did you pick up the phone, or did you fly out and fix the problem? Again, maybe operations isn't necessarily doing that, but anything that can set a person ahead of everybody else, that's going to be a leading indicator that they might be the right person
Yeah.
in the right seat.
I would say, I mean, we got really into detail there, but if anyone's listening, I would summarize that by saying it would not hurt to get a secondary outside opinion on the questions you are asking in your interviews if you're not confident, if those are like the questions that are helping you make good decisions. And I know Blake, and he's a pretty easygoing guy, so I'm sure if you wanted to reach out to him and ask to go over your
Yep.
interview questions, he would be willing to help you with that. But yes, I think like one, so to wrap all of that up, let's say preparing for the role you want to bring in before you bring it in, and making sure there's infrastructure there behind that role. Considering how you can provide stability to that person. What are you going to tell them to convince them that your company is stable? What's your value proposition? Why are you going to be here in 2 years? That's been a big one lately, in freight brokerage and trucking and tech. It's like, are you going to be here in 2 years? Am I going to have a job? So like really giving them that confidence that you guys, what your plan is and why you're successful, and articulate that value. So a good seller will never work for you, by the way, if they don't understand how they're going to be able to sell the product. So that's a big part of hiring on the revenue side, like we discussed. So creating that stability, creating the runway for the person when they get in and you find them and they land, and then really being intentional in your job hunt and like knowing who you're looking for, what the qualifications are. Consider partnering with help if you guys don't feel comfortable doing that. Blake would be a great resource. And I mean that sincerely to anyone listening. I'm not selling Blake. I know Blake personally, and I would
Thank
say
you.
like you could just ask him for advice on this if you're like recruiter curious per se.
Sure.
That's what I say. I like to use this word curious now. I'm a new mom. So my son is binky curious. Like we're trying to figure out if this is a thing we actually want to make mom's life easier or not, but we're not committed yet.
We're
So
still doing
right,
it.
you can
So
still, yeah, you can still
we're on
talk
the
to
flip
us.
side. We're
We're
like
parents.
questioning, are we bringing it out?
You and I are both new, relatively new parents here again. So we understand the being
Yeah.
curious about something. Um, and then, after that, like interviewing, and are we asking the right questions when we're interviewing? And are we making sure that we're avoiding costly mistakes by finding the right candidate through that process? So,
And not just me and my company. There's a great, I know of a bunch of recruiting firms. If anyone listens to this, I'm talking to you. Like, if you're a candidate that's just passive, have somebody on your side like
yeah.
us. You might not want to make a change till next year, but if we know that you're at least open to the idea, and no, I'm not telling companies your people should all be coming to me. It's more of you should always have a safeguard, just like companies have safeguards for them when they're employing their people. It goes both ways. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna make that a short clip probably for all my salespeople that I'm connected with, because I would also say, like, even when I loved my job, I had someone tell me once, never turn down a conversation with like a
You're
recruiter
networking.
or with someone who's interested, to grow your network and to know what your options are, because you might need it one day. And that's proven true for me before, or it was I did that. I never turned down a conversation, and you learn a lot about what's out there, and you grow a network, and that network connects you with people, and you have cool conversations. So, I mean, that's like every employer's worst nightmare to hear someone telling them to, their people to go have these conversations. But what it also did for me many times was solidify why I wanted to stay right where I was at. Because
Yeah,
when I had these conversations or I interviewed and I saw what else was out there, many times I was like, man, none of these are better than where I'm at. And I love what I'm doing. So that was
absolutely.
also true for me.
Well, if you look at any industry, I always use football, basketball as an example. They're recruiting 24/7. I'm pretty sure the trade deadline just happened yesterday and a bunch of
And they
different
have
players.
literal all-stars on their
Yeah.
roster. Like they could have the best team, and that doesn't mean that they stop recruiting.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
there's going to be company costs that also has to happen. So if we can take the company side as well, sometimes they have to reduce on headcount, and they have to reduce on some of the expenses that those founders created that company with. And that's okay. And it happens. And as long as you're prepared for that, that's the best you can do for your family and your personal life. So
Awesome. Well, we're past time because that's what I always do on this show these days. Dang it. I started the show as a 30-minute podcast, and anybody listening who's been listening is like, you did? Because it's never 30 minutes anymore.
yeah.
But I do try to eventually catch myself and rein myself in. But Blake started talking about sales and stuff, and so it's his fault because I can't not talk.
Sorry. That's what everyone wants. That's the trend. So we talked
That's what
about the
we're
trend,
so
and here it
sales and
is.
revenue generation is our big
Yep.
standout
Marketing, revenue
trend.
gen.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here, Blake. If people have questions and they want to connect with you, or they want to, ask any follow-up questions, we have a lot of people who listen back to this, might even listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever it is. What would be the best way to connect with you, and how could they reach out?
LinkedIn. I am on LinkedIn more than I probably should be. So LinkedIn is the best way, and my contact information is in there as well. And give Armada a follow.
Yeah. Okay. So if anyone's listening, we have an audio only version. Blake Collins, Collins. Blake's pretty easy to spell. You guys shouldn't mess that one up. You can find him on LinkedIn and give him a follow, shoot him a message, ask any of your questions. If you're listening back to the show on LinkedIn, you guys can definitely drop a comment or a question here in the comments, and just tag myself, tag Blake. We'd love to jump in, answer those questions for you here in the comment section as well. Same on YouTube. I think you can ask questions in the comments. We'll see. All right. Thanks everyone for being here. We appreciate it. Blake, thanks for taking the time. This was
Thank
a long
you.
overdue conversation. I enjoyed it.
We made it.
Thanks everyone for meeting us for coffee.